Hello folks, well met. This is founder Layron with the Fantastical Grounds Academy. Today we're going to take a look at the Tales of the Valiant 4 to 5 first level character adventure, Caverns of the Spore Lord. So this was fairly recent, it didn't come out too long ago, and if you are a backer of the Tales of the Valiant Kickstarter, this is one of the adventures that they give you for your participation. So this is some of the beta stuff, but this is available on the store. I put our affiliate link on the description, but essentially it's a nice first level adventure. It has a lot of potential for fun, and I like it because it's got a lot of elements to it that I appreciate in the fantasy games, and it's not your typical run-of-the-mill adventure, meaning it's not as predictable as some of the other content that's out there. So I kind of appreciated that. I took a really good look at this, and one of the things I want to do is convert it into Fantasy Grounds format, and I kind of wrote up a little blurb for it. But essentially, it's an adventure that starts you off fairly slow. You get to gain a level. I don't want to give away too much of the content, but it gives you kind of that fairy tale like experience. It kind of I don't know, it kind of just makes it feel like that you've done something and that you've actually made a difference in the world, and it doesn't feel so cliche or run-of-the-mill. It has some unique NPCs. It's pretty well balanced. I like the structure and the rules and the challenges in it. It touches on all of the pillars of role-playing games like exploration, combat, role-playing, and I like it because it's kind of a mix of fantastical and kind of a natural setting. The NPCs are kind of unpredictable. They kind of break the mold of your typical commercial RPG products. It's very well balanced, like I said. It has all the elements that you want. I like the little plot twist in it. The quality of the artwork is pretty good, and I like the way it's organized, so it's pretty well done adventure. And on top of that, Kobold Press has also released a kit that you can download for if you're a content creator. So I made this overlay for this particular occasion. So in case you want to make up your own backgrounds or you want to do your own stream featuring Kobold Press Tales of the Valiant, they've released this for free. Essentially, you can download it. It has some pre-made overlays, and then it has all the little pieces to the artwork so that you can make your own. Or it has some presets so you can really quickly just throw something up on OBS or XSplit, and you can use your streaming kit to help you with your project. So this is just something that will help you kind of get acclimated to the new setting that they're coming out with. But it gives you kind of a memorable introductory adventure for Tales of the Valiant. So it takes characters from levels 1 to 3. It utilizes the rules from the alpha release, so that is also available now for like $10 if you didn't do the Kickstarter. It has an enhanced adventure structure to help with the ease of play. So, like I said, the organization is good. And it has exploration and such with traps and monsters and such. So it has kind of like a conflict and also a twist to it. But one of the catch lines of it is, will the PCs stem the brewing conflict between the human and the mycolid communities? Will they solve the mystery of the infection and stop an apocalyptic cult? Will they be able to save the mycolid leader? So it has a really good story. I don't want to give away too much of it, but one of the things I'm going to do in this particular show is I'm going to show you the work, the stuff that goes into actually making it happen. So I did a little bit of the work ahead of time, so it doesn't take too much time to go through it. But I want to go through the maps because I think that's one of the important elements of this particular project. So I'm going to bring up the PDF initially here. And this is how the PDF turned out. It looks really good. I like the accents on the side. And let me bring up my pointer so that you guys can see what I'm pointing at. But essentially, it's got a really good structure to it. And I like the way it's laid out. It's nice and organized. I didn't see any typos, which is amazing. There's usually one. I didn't see any in this, so that's amen to that. And then to top it off, all these NPCs are kind of different than what you would get with the typical D&D adventure. They have their own stuff, their own role play aspects. So I like that because they're detailed. They have, you know, a purpose in the world. They're not just throwing a monster in there and some stat blocks. I mean, they actually have a function in the game. I really like that. So this adventure seemed like a lot of fun. So I'm going to go ahead and convert it over to Fantasy Grounds. And likely this will happen anyways in the future. I don't know when or who's going to do it, but I have a feeling that this will be converted over to Fantasy Grounds eventually. But I didn't really want to wait. And I like the practice too. So one of the things that, or a couple things to mention, is that you can become a lot more efficient with Fantasy Grounds, and you become a lot more intimate with the content you're working on. So if you do a conversion, whether it's for yourself or for a commercial product, you kind of get familiar with the content, which is a big plus, especially if you ever run it. The second thing is it gives you an opportunity to customize it to your needs, so you can arrange it any way you want in Fantasy Grounds if it's going to be for you and not for like a commercial product. And it allows for you to customize more. And then the third thing is, of course, to get practice with Fantasy Grounds and using the tools that's required or needed to get the job done. So there's a few benefits from doing these conversions. They do take time. They can be pretty annoying and they can be time consuming. And if you're not consistent, it can be a real drag on you to do this. So it could be something that, you know, it'll take time to do. This isn't something you want to rush through. So this is just the content that I'm going to be converting over. But one of the things I can say that I did not care for, or one of the things that it wasn't too good or great for me, was the map. I think they could have made the map like a full page. So maybe orient it the other way, vertically instead of horizontal. I realize there's a page count and then you have to shove this in somewhere, but when it comes to virtual tabletop, this is really critical. And perhaps when they do actually release a full version, they'll have a separate map pack for it or something, and tokens. But when you're doing this yourself, it's nice to have a good copy of the map. So the other thing I'm going to be doing is converting it over once I get it done. So I've already extracted the images out of the PDF. So that's one of the first thing I did. It took all of the main components out of the adventure. So if I go to the Spore Lord adventure here, this is most of the artwork, or if not all. And I've already taken the liberty to strip all of these out of the adventure. So this is one of the first things we're going to be doing. And what I used was a program called PDF Extraction Wizard. Pretty much that's what it does. It extracts images out. And then once it was done, I went ahead and converted these to a WebP format to cut down on the actual file size. If I had left these as a PNG file, they would probably be closer to a megabyte in size, but these are like half, if not less, than the traditional size of a PNG file. So they're in a WebP format. So I converted those over, but I'm going to do that with the map once it's converted. And then once I got it set up, I'll do that. So this map that I have here, I've already taken and removed. I took out all of these things here, which was the numbers, took those out. These dotted lines, I took those out because I didn't want the players to be, you know, caught with that for their attention. So I removed all of the room labels, and then I also resized the map a little bit because it's really big. So I wanted to make sure that the map wasn't going to be too huge or overwhelming when it comes to running the game in Fantasy Grounds. And then to convert it to WebP, we'll even cut down the actual file size so it will load a little quicker. But nonetheless, this is just some of the preliminary steps. So what I'm going to do is go into a program that you can get off the Fantasy Grounds official forums. It is called Map-Align. Essentially what it does is it stretches the map so that you can use it. And here is a copy of it. I think this is it. Yeah, so this is the version that I scrubbed already. So as you can see, it doesn't have the It's kind of obvious where the number was, but I scrubbed that out and kind of blended in a little bit. I wasn't trying to be too fancy because it's not a commercial product. And then, like I said, I took those lines out that correspond with where the water is open to the under the ground. So this is kind of like a 2D map with the map attached in here. So what I'm going to do is take this map and I'm going to stretch it and make sure that it's square before I import it into Fantasy Grounds. Then I'm going to convert it to WebP and then import it into Fantasy Grounds, put the line of sight on it. So I'm going to go ahead and close these for now. And I'm going to open up Map-Align. There are different versions of it. Make sure you get the latest version, which is the 64-bit. There's the large address-aware version, but that one is more for older, like Windows 7, Windows 8. The newer one works better with like Windows 10 and 11. And it's called Map-Align, and it's basically an executable. You don't install anything. And this is the menu that comes up when you first bring it up. So I'm going to go ahead and expand this, and then I'm going to import the map or bring the map over, the one that I had scrubbed all the parts out of. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this map that I had earlier. So I'm going to take this, drag and drop it, or open it from here. So let me go into here, and there we go. So I'm going to bring the map and bring this over. So right now it's set to 70 pixels per inch. So what I found is around 50 or 60 is better in size. And one of the things that you want to do initially is make sure that you're grabbing a really good square, because the first thing you do is you left click and you drag and make a square within one of the existing squares. So what I'm going to do is zoom in up here on top. So I'll go, let's see, you don't want to go past, see, this 200% is pretty good, but I go to like 400%. If you go higher than that, it's gonna lag. So I'm just gonna navigate this to a place on the map, and you can, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Oopsie, not that. Let's see, I'm gonna redo that. So, okay, so I'm gonna bring this map forward. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is use the navigation bars and then steer to an area where I can get to a good area. So let me go one more. And then what I mean by a good area is actual square that you can see. So I'm going to use one of these squares that's open, that doesn't have a bunch of stuff attached to it. And I want it to be so I can actually see the lines. So that's why I have it zoomed in so far. So what I'm going to do is take this little square here, and I'm going to left click and drag and bring this square as close as I can to square. So I'm actually going to click in the center, left click and drag. And then if you look at your width and height up on the top left corner, it looks like 36 by 36 for pixels is going to be a good number. So that's pretty close. So, and as you can see, it's a little bit off. And as you get further away from center, it tends to do that. So when you are in the map, and if you have a map that you've downloaded or that you've converted or changed over, what'll happen is these lines will be off, and it'll be hard for you to line it up in Fantasy Grounds. So that's the problem with sometimes when you're doing these maps. So this thing here is at 70, but and right now the output of width is 3700 by 2730. So that's a little big for this type of map. So I'm going to come over here and use this down arrow, and I'm going to change that to 50. So now the output size is going to be 2650 by 1950, which is about a 2K roughly size map. So that's pretty good. And if you look close over here, let me zoom in one more time, and then I'm going to come down and move over. You can see this is off. So as you work with this map, you'll notice that the red line here isn't lined up with these black lines, which is what we're going to do here. So the concept here is that you're going to be stretching the map. You're not actually moving these lines, you're actually moving the map, and it's going to stretch it out a little bit to help it line it up. So the input tile is 36 by 36 pixels, and we're going to try to do is shift it over a little bit using we're going to go from left to right first, and then top to bottom after that. It looks like for top to bottom it's pretty good, but we'll check that out. But right now it's off quite a bit over in this region. So the further away from the center you go, the worse it gets. So this is kind of what you got to look for when you're doing these conversions. See, this is off quite a bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to get this map lined up so that when we put it into Fantasy Grounds, the grid will line up correctly. And this is caused by a lot of different things, but when you shrink a map or stretch it, or if you find it online, it might have already been done like that. And sometimes when you export it or you import it into another program, it'll also reduce the size or change the dimensions. So we got the square set. So that's probably the most important part, is you want your input of 36 by 36, you want that correct. So when I did that left click and drag, that's probably like the most important part of this. Now the next step is to actually get these lined up so that it fits and that it aligns with this. So you only want to do one direction at a time. So the worst dimension here is from left to right. So we're going to work on that. So we start way over here on the left side, and we're going to work all the way over to the right. So for right now, the only buttons I really use, I don't move the grid because that messes up everything. But the 1/6 and the 1/8 are the only increments I really play with. And this is just the width part for now. So I'm going to hit this minus button, and when I shift it over, it kind of lines up already. So that looks pretty good already. But it's off still, so I'm going to hit this little plus button here and see if, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Let's do this. Plus button. Nope. Let's do the minus. Nope. So you just kind of go back and forth. You kind of shift this thing around between the width here just to see if you can get it close. And it's almost close enough. I'm just wondering if I can actually get it to where I want it to be. So let's see. I hit minus, hit plus. There we go. So that's a lot closer. So what you want to do now is shift the map over a little bit and check your alignment from left to right. So far it's still staying lined up, and that was just a real minor shift, and the only thing we're worried about is from left to right. We're not going to adjust up and down yet. So we're going to go from the left all the way over to the right, and we're going to check these to make sure they're not too far off. So they're starting to go off a little bit in this direction. So let me see if I can, now that I'm on this side of the map, I can stretch it just a touch more without breaking it. So let's see what we get here. Oops, I keep doing the wrong one. Okay, not that way. Nope. There we go. So that's perfect almost right there. So now I want to go back a little bit and check this and make sure it's still kind of on. And like I said, it's off now. So this is the thing you want to check. So I want to go back to probably to this and then shift it back over. Okay, so it's on here. And I'm going to move over. It's still on here. And that's all you're trying to do, is make sure that it's lined up all the way across. And I think that's good enough. I don't want to shift it too much more, so I think that we're close enough. Because if you play with it too much, you're just going to lose it. Yeah, that's not bad. I mean, it's close. So that's close enough. So now what I'm going to do is work on the top to bottom part of it. So it's off a little bit. So if I start from the top here and work my way down, as you can see here, this is way off up here on the top part. So we're going to start up in this top left corner and shift the tiles down. So as you can see right here, it's off quite a bit from the red line to this kind of faint black line. So I'm going to go to the height adjustment here, and we'll see what we get. So that's pretty close there. Did we lose anything? So I'm going to come down here and take a look at where we're at in the other caverns. Yeah, it's still on enough. I mean, it's shippable. And that looks pretty good. So you just kind of keep coming down and until it, you know, if it starts getting really far off, then you got to make some adjustments. So I'm looking now at the, you know, the top to bottom, that adjustment, and it looks to me like it's good enough. Good enough. So we're gonna ship it. So this way you're not, you know, you're not playing around with it all day. And like I said, this version of the map is essentially one that I scrubbed out the numbers, so that's why these little blemishes are here. But they're blended enough to where it's not going to matter that much. And I think that's good. So we're going to ship it. So what I'm looking at here before I export it is the original size was 1873 by 1362. With the output and adjusting it and having it at 50 pixels per inch, it's going to be 2700 by 1950, which is still within reason. When you start getting past 4K, that's when you start having problems with these maps. So this is pretty good. This is probably closer to like a 2K in dimension. So it's the, you know, from left to right, top to bottom. And once you have that figured out and you have these lines figured out, then what you can do is you hit a save button here. And I'm going to save the map. And I think I'll leave this file name, but I want to change it to a PNG temporarily because I'm going to convert it over to WebP format. So there's the height and the width and the name of the cavern. So I'm actually going to get rid of that for part of the title. And one of the things you want to do with images is you want to rename them now. Don't wait till you already have it in Fantasy Grounds and then try to go back and fix it later. It's better if you do it like this. So I have it set up as map underscore cavern of the Spore Lord underscore and then, you know, .png. So I'm going to hit save and it asks me if I want to replace this. I'm going to say no, and I'm going to put version 2 just in case. So underscore 2, because I don't want to burn my bridges there. So I hit save, and then all the map is lined up. So this is map align, and this is basically, if you click on directions, it tells you how to set it up. And you just use these little increments, and the only increments I use are this 1/6, 1/8 stuff. I don't usually use the pixel. I don't move the grid once you have it traced out, because it will really mess up your project. And then pay attention to your output. So for tiles, it's 54 wide by 39 tall. So that's pretty much your maximum size for something like this. You don't want anything bigger than that, or it's just going to be a nuisance to run it. You get maps that are over 100 wide and 100 tall. They're going to be a little bit big for, I mean, as far as playability and having to move the map around and stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and hit File, Exit, and that gets rid of that. And now let me see which one is it. It's number 2. So this is the number 2 file that and right now it's at 7 megabytes, which still isn't bad. And it would definitely be doable in Fantasy Grounds, but I'm going to reduce this quite a bit. So if I right click on this, I'm going to open it with one of my programs. So I have Corel. If you have Adobe or, you know, whatever program you use, it's up to you. But I use Corel, but some people use Adobe, or you can even use GIMP, whatever you want to use it for. But I'm going to go ahead and convert it to a WebP format. So I want to go to here and open this up. And basically, I'm just going to hit File, Save As, and then I got it set for WebP, and then hit Save. And it will say, because of the blah, 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 say yes. So, and now that it's converted to WebP, I want to export it. Let's see, Save As. Let's go with, yep. Yeah, it's saying, do you want an existing one? I'll say yes. Okay, so it's been converted. So let's go ahead and take this and close it. And then we're going to go back to the folder that it's in. And this is the WebP version. And if I right click on it and go to show more options and properties, it's cut that thing down. I didn't even change the percentage or the quality. It's only like a half a megabyte, if that. Before it was like 7 megabytes, and before that it was like 20. So that when I first took it out of the PDF, it was pretty good size. And then I actually went in and converted it to PNG and then worked on it. And now that I've exported it, now it's actually a smaller file. So that helps a little bit. So dimensionally it's smaller and file size it's smaller. So that kind of helps with Fantasy Grounds. So I'm going to right click and go to copy, and then I'm going to open up Fantasy Grounds and bring it in. So right now I have this older version, so I'm going to open up this folder and go to maps, and I'm actually going to delete this one and hit Control V as in Victor. And now that I have that there, I'm going to go ahead and close this and then refresh so it doesn't mess that up. And this is the preview copy of it. So it looks pretty good. So create image record is what I want to do. So I'm going to open up the images, and I believe I made a folder for this. ToV Caverns of the Spore Lord. So this was the previous map, which is blank now because I deleted it. So I want to delete that. Okay, and now I'm going to click on Create Image Record. And there we go. So now what we're going to do is start doing the line of sight on the map. So this is where a lot of the work comes in. So after you do all the conversion part of it, and you're kind of like reconfiguring the file and such, I'm going to go ahead and add the first thing you do on these is start adding your line of sight, and your grid is the first step actually. So we're going to put the grid on it. It should be 50 pixels or right therein. That's what we converted it as. We'll see if it worked. So this will help when you have a map that needs the, for the grid to line up with Fantasy Grounds. So I'm going to turn the grid on, and it's at 50 right now. And as you can see, it's not lined up yet, so I need to line this up. You can even see it here on the corner. So first things first is I'm just going to move the map. So I'm going to go to Layers. Instead of moving the tile or the lines, I'm going to move this whole image. I don't normally do this, but I want to see how it snaps. Yeah, so that looks right. It snaps to grid, and the grid is pretty much lined up. So I'm going to turn it a different color so it's not so washed out with this gray. So what you can do is take and go to the tint, and what I'll do is I'll use this, oops, didn't mean to do that. What I'm trying to do is go to, okay, so I'm on the tile area where the grid is. I'm going to hit tint, and we're going to change the tint of the actual grid, and then turn the opacity down a little bit so it's not too obnoxious, and hit OK. And what you want to look for is to see if it's still centered throughout the map, and it looks like it is, so not too shabby. Yeah, it looks pretty good. It's not off anywhere. Like I said, if you don't do the extra step in there, sometimes those lines will not line up. It's a little tiny bit off here, but that is very shippable. I don't think there's a problem with it. So that is the first step, is to actually get this set up. And then what we're going to do is start putting on the line of sight. And what I'll do is I'll just make this little town. I'll just put terrain on these little things here to kind of give it that 3D representation, because the rest of this is top down, and this will be outdoors, and the rest of this will be indoors. So what we're going to do now is start putting in the occluders and that sort of thing. So I'm going to start with the terrain first. So terrain is basically just going to block light, and I'm just going to do that on some of these buildings. Probably not even necessary, to be honest. So what I can do is actually put glass around these if I wanted to, but these are really more of a starting point, sort of. But just in case, I might put a little bit of glass so that party members can't move through the buildings. But I don't think there's going to be a whole lot going on out here, so I probably just leave it, because that way you don't have to mess with it. Now the next thing I'm going to do is set up the ambient light. So that's just the overall lighting. So I'm going to go to the lighting tool and then go to ambient light. I'm going to use the drop down as my preset, and I'll put it on sunlight. And then once I do that, I'm going to hit the mask layer. And what I'll do is I'll mask off the rest of this map so that it doesn't show the daytime light inside of the cavern. So I'm just going to block this whole thing out here. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. Okay. And now I'm going to turn it on so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So what it does here is it's going to block the light from the outdoors. So now what I'm going to do is go back into the lighting mode and then go back to the ambient lighting. And then I'm just going to block out the rest of this. I'm going to freehand it, but I'll just go ahead and left click. Let's see, I want to make sure I got this correct. So there, I got this selected. The mask is on. And then I want to reveal or hide. So I want to reveal, actually. No, I want to hide an area. That's what I want to do. Let me see if that's right. Yep. So I want to hide the area, which is what I'm doing now. And you can kind of block it out until you get close to the non-square part. And then you can freehand this by holding the Alt key and just kind of dragging this up. It doesn't have to be perfect. You drag that up there. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. So let me fix that. So again, I'm going to hold down the Alt key and just kind of trace this up and then come down just like that. And it gets you closer to where you want to be. And now I'm going to get a little bit closer and be a little bit more careful. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm going to make it closer. There we go. And then if you want to fix it, like if you mess up anywhere, I'm going to change it over to unveil certain areas. There we go. So this is basically the beginnings of this. And now I'm going to turn off the lighting for now because I don't want to get confused. But we already got the ambient lighting taken care of. So now the next thing I'm going to do is start taking this and tracing out the line of sight with the wall tool. So basically this is the cavern, goes in, so I'll put a door here eventually. But what I'm going to do is go into the line of sight tool, and then I'm going to go to the wall tool here, and then the line tool. So this is just going to be a series of dots, and you don't need to be really super close to the edge, and you don't need to be outside of this, but I'm going to basically try to click around the outer edge so that at least they're 5 feet wide. If not, it's going to be difficult to go through here, and you're going to get a traffic jam. So I'm going to go ahead and start in here and just kind of click around. And like I said, you don't have to have every nook and cranny. You just kind of go through and come around at the edge. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. And what you'll find on these cavernous ones is that the line of sight is pretty heavy as far as performance goes. So when you're doing these caverns, you don't need to be like right up against every single nook and cranny. And as a matter of fact, I'm kind of on the outside here because I want the players to see the wall, and I don't want them to see a black blob. So I'm kind of coming around and clicking on the, just some of the main features here, not anything particular. Because this is where a lot of people go wrong when they first start this. They think they have to be right up to the edge, which is not true. Because all you have to do really is just trace around, get close enough, and this will help. It'll do what it's supposed to do, and it'll look good. And it's not going to look too bad. You can always come back after you're done placing these lines, remove a couple of the points. You can come back and adjust them, move them in and out, whatever you need to do. So I'm just kind of getting the major points in here. And then once this is over with, I can go back and make some adjustments if something looks too out of whack, or maybe I got too close to the wall or too far, whatever that might be. So just take your time, go around the map. And I'm just single clicking, dragging the mouse, trying to kind of follow the contour a little. Like I said, not every single little nook and cranny needs to be covered here. This one is a little bit more difficult because it's a kind of a weird indent, but again, I'm going to go and probably work on that later, like fix it. I just want to get majority of this done. Because this is where you're going to lose your time. If you put too much detail into this, no one's going to notice anyways. It's going to be very difficult to justify over an hour for doing something like this that you might use for a couple sessions. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. My rule of thumb is if it's over about 90 minutes or so, it's not worth it to me. And I've learned that the hard way. I was trying to be too precise and way too happy and accurate, and it just doesn't compute. It doesn't pay off in the long run. Once in a while, like if you do a product that you're going to be selling on the store, you want to be a little bit more accurate and a little bit, more refined with it. But in this case, all I'm doing here is setting this up for my own reasons. Not selling it on the Fantasy Grounds store, and this is for me, so I don't have to be absolutely perfect. If somebody complains about the map department, then they can become the map department and do it themselves, as far as I'm concerned. Because I try to do my best, but I'll be damned if I'm going to spend hours upon hours of doing this, especially if it's just something you're going to be using around your own table. There's no point. I mean, there's people that are artistic that want to make their own maps. That I understand, but just taking an existing map and putting on the line of sight and the occluders, it's not even worth the time. It's just, you're just trying to get the functionality, not perfection necessarily. If you are a perfectionist, good luck to you, because this will drive you nuts. If you don't, take it easy a little bit. Don't get too crazy on it. It's not the end of the world. No one's going to notice but you, maybe one other person. And when that person notices, I'll say, hey, you do it then. Because I personally don't want to spend all day doing this for a personal campaign. I do a little bit, but not all day long, all night. That's for something more like if you're going to be selling it. That I could see, but doing something like this for fun and just kind of instruction, I'm just going to be honest with you and say, don't screw around with it too much. It's not worth it. It's usually, you'll spend a lot of time making these lines and realize it doesn't really matter that much. What does matter though is playability. So by backing this off and not going right up to that line, it gives the players the illusion of the height because of the way the map was drawn, but it also gives you more room. So when you got a crowd of people going through a small, narrow passage, it's a pain in the butt to manage in Fantasy Grounds. So you'll learn that as you run adventures. You go, crap, this area is way too narrow. And you'll be sorry for that because it's hard because then you have to fix everyone's tokens. You have to move them for them. You hit shift and you hold a token and move it. As the GM, you could do that. But as a player, you don't have that option. So what I try to do is limit that interaction so I don't have to do that very often. And that you do that by just kind of going around the edge. You don't have to be right up to the edge. And that makes a little bit more breathing room in these narrower passages, and especially like doorways. I just ended up quitting the line there, but that's okay. Sometimes it's better to have a break in there somewhere. I try to keep the same line on these caverns, but it's no big deal. That was a pretty big line. And if that happens to you, you just click on the square and start again. I'm not going to go and redo that whole line. No way. I think I'd be going nuts if I had to go back and fix that for that little discontinuation. So that's all I'm doing here is taking in this and just taking my time, going through, making the lines. And actually, I'm probably spending a little bit too much time on it already. But I got to explain, the process, and I want you to see the work, because that's really the issue here is, how do you do the actual work? A lot of times you get these tutorials and they've already done all the hard parts. They just show you the finished product. They don't show you the labor, the tough parts, the actual work, the dedication, the discipline, all that stuff, and that's really what it takes is this discipline, practice, realistic idea of what you're going to be going through. If some people get really pissed off because they can't achieve what they want in 10 minutes, and that's not what is going to happen with Fantasy Grounds. You're not going to get most stuff done in 10 minutes. Unless it's a tiny little map with hardly any details. And without explaining any of this and kind of doing this on my own without recording and streaming live, it'd probably take me, probably about 1/3 less of the time, because I would already probably be done or close to it. But I don't mind taking the time to show you guys, because this is really what you need to see. It isn't the end product, it's the getting to the end product that you need. And that's why I'm trying to do a lot of these tutorials, so you can see the work, not just, and the tools too. Not just, oh, here's a map I converted. Doesn't it look nice? Nah, yeah, it looks great. How'd you do it though? And that's really what I'm trying to do, is make this more realistic and more true to the crap you got to go through to get these things done. And I'm sure there's, better ways to do it. If you have a better way to do it, that's great. I hope you share it, because that would be nice if you have a quicker way to do this kind of thing. But I just kind of enjoy the piece of it. Like, sometimes it can be tedious, but sometimes tedium isn't a bad thing. Like, it's just kind of mindless. You're just going to go through and click through this stuff and make yourself a map, line of sight set up, and it just kind of, I don't know, I just got used to it. No one wants to waste a bunch of time putting this, but it's something that it's kind of a labor of love. You just got to practice, get used to it. Don't get too mad if it's not perfect, because that's where I think a lot of people go wrong. They get way too serious about it. So this part here, I'm going to actually connect these, and that's going to be where I put the door. It's going to be kind of a doorway there. And I'm going to go through and check to see what we have here. Yep. Okay. So I'm going to also put some line of sight here. So I might as well do that now. So I'm going to come off this wall and just kind of lightly come through and just kind of click around. I want them to see that border. And then if you want a straight line, like from this point down, you can hold the shift key and it will make that line straight for you. So once you stretch it over and get it to where you want, you can hold the shift key and it will go really straight. And then same thing up here. I'm going to bring the map up and I'm going to hold the shift key and that'll straighten it up. Wait. Shift and shift and double click on this little square. So now we just encapsulated the entire map and also the inner walls. And then we have ourselves this area, which is where the adventure is going to take place. I got a little bit of interior work to do, but that's not bad. So I'm going to start another line and work in this middle piece here. Again, kind of backing off from the actual lines. Don't need a right up to the very edge unless it's really tight like that one spot. And then double click and join those together. Same thing here, just kind of come through here. All right, so that's that. So this isn't, you know, anywhere near from done. I want to go through and put a little bit of we're going to put a little bit of landscape in here, and then I'm going to put some lighting, some bioluminescent lighting in here, and then some water. Of course, we'll do a little bit of water, and let's see what we got here. So I think that now that I have that done, I am going to put the door in here. So that's this only door here, this entryway, and you can see I didn't get to join it all the way. So I'm going to go to the selection tool, take these lines and connect them. And then if you want to make any adjustments, this would be the time to do it. So you can come through and, you know, stretch these around a little bit, maybe back them off if you got too crazy with any time that you've done this type of work. You'll know that it drives you nuts if you don't fix something. Don't think it's that critical, but there's a couple spots that I wanted to check because of how close they are together. So this part here could be potentially problematic. So I'm going to back this off a little bit and bring this over just a hair. When you're clicking on this, you might accidentally join those, so that's why I had to come back later and fix it. So this is just kind of a way to bring this stuff to life here, and then, you know, give yourself a little bit of room. And there was this spot right here that I wasn't too happy with. So this one's a little bit more difficult. So I'm just going to go here and come up here, and then this, bring this down, take this, bring this up. There we go. So that's a lot better. So you got enough room to go in here, but it still has some contour to it. All right, so that's just kind of going around and adjusting the lines that you've already put in place. And what you're going to see is you got all these dots, right? It looks like there's a lot because you're zoomed out, and it's a pretty good sized map. So what you can do is come over to a tool. So I'm in the selection tool, and there's this simplify occluder. So I'm going to double click, and then I'm going to click that and see what happens. Yeah, so it got rid of some of the dots, which we don't need. And then I'll just double click on one of these points in here and do it one more time. See, that reduces the amount of dots. And it only works really well if you got a ton of dots or a ton of these little occluders. So I got rid of some of them. So I didn't get rid of all of them. I got rid of a good portion of them. You don't want to get rid of too many because then you start losing your features. But I think that's good. So I probably took away at least 20% just by doing that. So it'll take out some of these occluders that are redundant and the little points here. So that's what you want to do on Caverns. So get all your line work done, and then if you think there's too many points or you got too detailed here, you can just double click on one of your lines and then hit this simplify occluders. I don't want to do it again because it'll probably lose one of my features here. So I'm going to move this back a little, move this down. So I just made a few adjustments just around these tight areas because I don't want players to stack up. So like right in here is kind of a tight area, so I might back this one off a little bit. This is the stuff that gets annoying during gameplay, because if you get too close to the edge, Your players are going to get stuck in the walls, and you're going to have to move them, and it's not fun to do in the middle of a game. I mean, it's part of the, it's part of being a DM, but it sucks if you have to do it a lot. So this is just something you'll learn as you play with Fantasy Grounds, is that sometimes that accuracy is not worth it. Okay, so you want the map to be more functional and playable and less hassle. All right, so this is that. And now that I have this, I'm going to put the door in. So I'm going to go to the door tool. And then it automatically is going to cut out the center. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of make it not too wide, but it's going to be kind of wide. But I'm going to use the line tool instead of the rectangle because it's kind of an uneven area. So I want to go ahead and take this and just kind of come out here and kind of make this, it's not a perfect doorway, but it is there. It blocks light. That's what we want. And you don't want it too small, otherwise it's hard to click on it to unlock it. So I'm just going to move the lines in just a little, just so it kind of lines up with that. And I want to make sure that this line is crossing. See, it's not. So I want to make sure that this vertex here is going to, let me make sure, go to the line tool. Oops. Yeah, see, it's not quite where I want it. There we go. You want that vertex. And then I can just single click and hit delete. You want that connection point. Otherwise, it's gonna, the light will go through the wall. So that's the only real doorway. The rest of this is gonna be decoration. So what I'm gonna do is take the terrain tool and put a little bit of terrain on these mushroom caps and these huts and stuff, and then call it good. I don't need a whole lot. So I'm going to go to the terrain tool, which only blocks light anyways. And then I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm in line mode and just kind of come around the insides of these mushroom caps. Put a little bit of terrain in here so it gives you the illusion that there might be, some kind of mushroom stalks that you can hide behind. You don't want it too crazy, because then it becomes a hassle. And then maybe a little bit over here. This looks like a little pit. And then we got this thing here, another little dwelling. There's one here. And I thought I saw some boulders over here. Yeah, so I might put one here. Since it's kind of tall, can't see over it. But other than that, there isn't too much more that you need to put terrain on. I think that's just a kind of more of a decorational thing than function. Maybe these guys here, maybe they're tall enough to where you'll have a place to hide if need be.
I ate. Everything else is for you.
So this looks like a little bit of a rock jam here. So I'll go ahead and block that a little. And now I think just lighting. So there'll be some ambient lighting here. I think what I'll do is the water first. So going to add another layer. So add an effects layer and then go to the effects tool and click on water. So water. You can see it's on the entire map. So we're going to put a mask on it and then we'll reveal the area that's just the water. So I'm going to hold the Alt key down and kind of just trace around to get a close amount here. And you don't have to do this in one go. You can do this in stages. So this is the first stage. And now I'm just going to come down and trace the river area. Like I said, you don't have to be perfect. This just kind of gives you the illusion that there's, kind of a liquid here. We'll adjust those as we go, but for right now, we're just trying to get a majority of the water kind of blended in, but you don't have to go right up to the edge. Again, you're just trying to get that kind of wavy pattern. I'm holding down the Alt key so that I can kind of trace without having to make squares. So that's how you do this unmasking and masking if you don't want a perfect square. And if you got a large body of water, you can start with squares and then go around the edges. Yeah, it looks good enough. And now what I'm going to do is kind of adjust this a little bit. So maybe turn the speed down just a hair. And then the mask will blend it in. You have a blur tool. So this will blend in the very edges. So it's kind of blends in with the map more. And then you don't want the intensity too much because then it's going to look fake. Turn down the horizontal a touch. There we go. So that's just a little bit of touch up there for the water. You know, you just got a little bit of movement there, nothing big. So what I'm going to do now is put some ambient lighting around in this area because this looks like bioluminescent lighting. So I'm going to kind of follow the color patterns that are here. So I want to go to the lighting tool and I'm going to start a new layer. That way I can turn these on or off, or actually they can all be on one layer because it's all going to be bioluminescent light. It's not going to be like a light switch or anything. So what I'll do is still going to have a separate layer, and then I'm going to go to the add light tool, probably make most of this a lantern preset. So what I want to do first is select the preset. So we're going to go with lantern. I'm going to change the color to kind of fit the color here. So I want to go to this color picker and use that to set the color and hit OK. And then I'm going to click on where I want the light to go. So here's one. We'll put one over here. Do I have any more of that color? Nope. I think that'll be about it. So this will give us that kind of bioluminescent light. So now I'm going to come over here and do the same thing with this area for this bioluminescent area. So again, I'm going to go ahead and leave I'm going to stay on the same layer because it's all going to be on at all times unless you go and scrape the walls, which I doubt anyone's going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and select again, lantern, and then I'm going to come to the color picker. So let's see. I want to go to lantern and then go to the color picker, and I'm going to kind of pick up this pinkish purple color and hit OK. And then I'm just going to click where I want that lighting to show. And then there's a couple green patches. So again, I'm going to go to the lighting tool. I'm going to pick lantern again. Pick the color. I'm going to use the color picker and then pick the green, and this time hit OK, and then click where I want the green bioluminescent light. Maybe I'll do a little bit here on this river. Doesn't look like there's much there, but I'll go ahead and just do one right there. So that's it. So let's take a look at the map. So I'm going to hit this and turn on these lights here. So this is kind of what it looks like once the map is shared with the players and they're able to see inside the cavern. So we can test this, the line of sight and the walls and stuff, by using an NPC. So I'm going to use the combat tracker, which is where the NPCs or the monsters have to go. I do have just the SRD loaded, and then I have some of Kobold Press's content. So I do have some NPCs that I can work with. So I'm going to go to NPCs, come down. Let's see. I want just a, let's just do a human of some sort. So let's see if there is such a thing. Okay, so here's a priestess. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and... nope, that's not what I want. Let's go with an Acolyte. I always know that that's going to work. Okay, so here's an Acolyte. And I'm going to put this up on the combat tracker. And then what we'll do is we'll take the Acolyte, make it visible, drag it over to the map. And then once we have it, you know, we can actually go up here, open the door. And they can't see anything because this is basically how the player would see it. So the Acolyte is going to cast a spell. I think she has a light spell. Let's see what we got here. So I'm going to go to the offense, and here's the light spell. So I'm just going to take the preset from the actual effects, and what I'm going to do is drag over the light spell onto her. And now she has her own light, and she can see through the tunnels. So this is how you check how it's going to look once you have all this set. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Not bad at all. So that's basically the work that it takes to get the maps in, to check them, to make sure they're functioning properly, and to see if they can move around. It doesn't look too crowded. That's what I'm looking for. So when you have a map like this, and you got like 4 or 5 people coming through here, if you come right up to the edge here, that's going to be a nuisance. So you got to have at least 5 feet of space in there, and this is 5 feet and then some. So that kind of helps with that, so it doesn't get too crowded. Sometimes tactically that can kind of ruin things, like if you want a choke point, but in most cases that's going to be annoying. And then here's the little village. I don't know if I should make a pit here or not. I'm not sure what that is. I got to go look at the adventure, but if it is, I'll put that in. Let's go take a look at that river. Oh yeah, that looks really good. Not bad. Not bad at all. All right, so that's pretty much all I'm going to do for today. The rest of the stuff I'm going to do off and on until when I get time, but I just wanted you to see the work. So if you missed most of the video, I extracted the map from the PDF, then I converted it to a PNG file, and then I removed or scrubbed away the actual numbers on the map, because there was no player map with the module. So this was the Caverns of the Spore Lord. It's like $5. In my case, since I was a Kickstarter for the Tales of the Valiant, I got a code for it, but I'll have a link for this in the actual description. But I'm kind of using this as a way to kind of illustrate the process, and also to practice using Fantasy Grounds, and then also to become familiar with the adventure. When you have it on your fingertips and you're doing all the work in it, you kind of get ultimately, you get familiar with it, and that's really a good thing if you're going to run it. So I just kind of went through and talked a little bit about it. It's like a one-shot adventure, and it's kind of cool because you get to level up in it, and it gives you some unpredictable NPCs. They're not your run-of-the-mill kind of NPCs that you get. So the adventure was written very well in the fact that it's like a fairy tale like experience. And there's only a couple parts that might be a little bit rough for younger kids, but you can probably run a majority of this for kids that are under 13, maybe from like ages 9 to 13. There's just a couple strong parts, like one where it deals with death and stuff, but I think you could, if you're experienced enough, you could get through that without acting too nuts or crazy. You can just say that the guys are sleeping or so. You don't have to say they're dead and there's dead bodies hanging from the ceiling. You don't have to do that. But there is a part like that in here, but everything else looked pretty good, like PG-13. And this adventure is pretty cool. So that'll be in the description at the end of the video, along with some of the resources and just the kind of outline of what we did. And it's just kind of a cool adventure. And now, by the time I'm done with this, I'll be able to run it, and it'll be in time for the release next spring. and I don't have to wait for Smiteworks to do their conversion. I just do my own. So this way, I already have the PDF, so I'm already kind of doing most of the work. I might have to change some things related to the NPCs or the players, but other than that, I'll have most of the work done. So, and the other thing you want to do is lock your layers once you have them set, because you don't want to accidentally mess that up. But here's the terrain where you can open this up if you climb on top of the mushroom cap. So that's pretty much a done deal. So anyways, take care, everyone. Enjoy your weekend. Happy Saturday, I guess it is. And we'll see you around.